Chris, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Mike. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. We're excited about this. And I appreciate you're only in town till tomorrow, you said, right?
Yeah, I got in yesterday and I'll be here till tomorrow.
Gotcha. Well, I appreciate you making time to jump on here with us. So for people who don't know you, Chris Schmidt, give them a little bit of a rundown about what you do and where we're at now.
Sure. So I'm the agency owner of the Brightway Insurance in Pace, Florida. I actually own 3 offices, one in New Orleans, which is kind of our home base, and then I own one here in Pace, and then one in Fort Mill, South Carolina, which is right outside of Charlotte.
I knew there was one way up there, way out in the boonies.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so it's actually, Fort Mill is one of the fastest growing areas in the country. It's right outside of Charlotte. Charlotte's had such a massive boom just because of the financial sector that's so prevalent there. So a lot of those people, there's an area called Ballantyne that's right outside Charlotte, and then Fort Mill is right next to Ballantyne. So we have one there. But yeah, I bought the Pensacola office from another agent about a year ago, so actually in July of 2019. So we've owned it for 14 months here in the Pensacola area.
Very nice.
Now, before then, were you familiar with Pensacola, or where are you from originally? Are you?
Yeah, so I'm actually from Tampa, Florida originally. Gotcha. I moved out to New Orleans in 2008, so I've been there 12 years now. I actually was in the oil and gas industry before I got into insurance.
Okay.
When oil and gas collapsed in 14-15, in December of 2015, the company I was working for was based out of Manchester, England. And my boss approached me and said, hey, here's the deal. You can either move to Houston or here's 90-day severance. Ooh. And my wife was 6 weeks away from having our first child.
Oh, no.
And New Orleans women don't move. So I was like, well, I guess I'll take the 90-day severance. And that's how I got into insurance.
You had to make something work in 90 days.
Exactly.
Wow.
Yep.
Oh, man.
So that's how I got into insurance. So,
And I'm sorry to cut you off.
No, go ahead.
Walk us through those first 90 days. I mean, from when, because that's what a lot of people have trouble doing, right, is starting. I was just on a call yesterday with a friend of mine who wants to start in real estate, and he's like, I don't know what to do to get business. So walk us through in 90 days. You know, I don't know how that went or if it was like really hiccupy or anything, but take us through that and how did you get started? Because obviously you're doing well now, so you did something right.
Yeah, sure. So I've actually been in sales my entire life. So I sold knives in college. I'm 43, and when I was 18, that's kind of where my sales career started, selling Vector. I don't know if you ever heard of Vector marketing. A lot of people in college sell the Cutco knives. So that's what I was doing, was selling Cutco knives, and I decided that was going to be my path going forward, is I was going to be in some type of sales role. So I say that to say this, is what I found out about insurance, whether it's just like real estate, insurance, anything that's involved in sales, the first thing you have to look at, I think, is say, do I want to interact with people on a regular basis? Because let's face it, including all of us here, people are a pain. Like, and it's like, do you want to deal with people every single day, day in and day out?
That's going to be our quote from this episode.
That's right.
People are a pain.
Yeah, but it really is one of those things
true.
you have to look at and say, like, am I wanting to do that? Because there's lots of jobs out there that you can just sit in front of a computer, type away, go home at 5 o'clock and not have to worry about it. That's not real estate. That's not selling insurance. That, you know, any type of sales job, you're going to take that with you, because you're either going to be celebrating the success or thinking about where did I make the mistake and how can I get better. So that's what I realized in the first 90 days is the insurance piece was actually, and I'm sure you probably know this from the real estate side, that's the easy part of the job. Learning like all the industry jargon, how to fill out the paperwork, all that's the easy stuff. It's the figuring out how can I come across as a subject matter expert to my client and make them feel like, hey, this is who I want to do business with. That's what I think
out
is
of all the other options that are out there. And it's the same. There's so many things that are involved in real estate. You know, lending and insurance are the two things that come to mind. And there's so many in all of those. So many options. It's crazy. So coming across as an expert and someone that your clients would want to do business with, that's the name of the game, really, and shaking as many hands as possible. You know,
and working with realtors and lenders, because that's our main source of leads. So we reach out. It's a little bit different model, and the way that I built it was I looked at, so you all own a car, you own a house, right? So if I were to get your homeowners and your auto, that's 2 transactions, and the reality is that's probably the end of our relationship. Maybe at a crawfish boil 2 years from now, your uncle will be complaining about how high his insurance is. So you'll be like, hey, call my guy, Chris. But the reality is like, so maybe I'm going to get 2 or 3 transactions out of you in a lifetime. Whereas with a realtor or a lender, a good realtor can send me 4 or 5 deals in a month, and same with a lender. So that's that's 60, you're talking about 60 transactions with a good realtor or a good lender per year.
Yeah.
That's a much more fruitful opportunity. So
Than
that's
going
what
directly to.
Exactly. So we built, and I say that because I think it talks about what I had to learn on the insurance side. Is what I realized is that in insurance to be successful, and this is just like for like a lender who supports realtors as well, you have to start looking at the sale from the realtor's eyes, from the lender's eyes. And what I mean by that is you are their vendor. Like we are a vendor to you, Mike. Like that's what we do, right? So you say, hey, and the reason you would use Brightway is because we turn it around fast. We offer your customer the best coverage at the lowest price. And most importantly, we get the 3 letters that we're all looking for, which is CTC, clear to close, because that's how everybody gets paid. And so that was what I thought was important. That's what I coach my team on is we have to think about it from the realtor and the lender's perspective. How can we make this experience better for not only their client, but better for the lender and the realtor?
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, and to be honest, one thing for me that's huge is I've only been doing this for a couple of years, and I know that if I have a question, I can text you and you respond so fast. I can call you with a question. You're a resource for me so that I can learn things from you and bring more value to my clients.
Right.
You're that support for me as well as doing the transaction. And that's 100% valuable. So that's really interesting to look at it from the view of, is that me? There we go. That's actually an alarm to talk to you about a situation after we get off the air. So sorry about that.
Yeah, no worries.
But anyway, okay, having said that, so your first 90 days, you kind of approached it in a different way. From then, was it just talking to as many realtors and lenders as possible? Or,
it was.
Okay.
Yep. So what I did was I used different sources like LinkedIn, or went to Google, found out who are the realtors, the lenders in the area, and I started reaching out to them. And in the first 18 months, actually about the first 15 months, I literally met with 161 realtors and lenders, and I walked up to them and said, can I get a shot? Like, that's what I realized. 2008 changed, as I know on the real estate and the lending side. 2008 changed everything from the home buying experience, because you suddenly, whereas before you would go and your realtor, your lender would just say, like, here's my guy, here's my inspector, here's my appraiser, boom, boom, boom. All that changed with the collapse of 2008. And so realtors and lenders were now being asked to pull back from making direct recommendations and more offering, especially with lenders, they were encouraged to offer 3 different opportunities. Say, hey, here's 3 names. And so what I was trying to do when I first started was go to realtors and lenders and say, hey, I know that you're giving out several names, because, and I get it, you don't really want to be on the hook, right? Like you don't want those people come back going, Mike, you recommended this. And I get that piece of it. So what I was doing is I was saying, hey, how do I get to be one of your 3 people? And inevitably, every single realtor and lender was like, you know what? This person, they've been on my list for 4 years and they've never done anything for me. They're not responsive. They take forever. Let me scratch them and you're on the list. Okay, you're going to now be one of my 3. And that's how we started. And the best thing about the realtor and the lender community, it's very tight-knit. Realtors know other realtors. Lenders know other lenders. And what I found is that they like to be the subject matter expert. They like to be a source of referrals for their colleagues, right? So Mike, if I do right by you, you're going to tell other realtors, like, hey, I got a good guy. He'll respond fast. And that's really how we built the business, is just by being, by building really good relationships with realtors and lenders in our specific markets.
That's great.
That is so valuable. I like that a lot. And having said that, just a little thing to add on. Half of them, they said, this guy's not even responsive. He hasn't never done anything for me. I hear that a lot on the real estate side as well. I talk with people. I have people call me sign calls on a lot of my listings, and they're like, I was working with a guy, I think a couple months ago, but I haven't heard from him, or I can't get a hold of him. And I'm like, okay, well, let's do something. Let's make something happen. So when you answer your phone or answer text or call people back maybe once or twice and follow up, that goes a long way. It really does. Sure. Okay. So that was your first 18 months you said you
about the first 15 months I was trying to figure out, and it's interesting when I first started the shop, and I always tell people, what I realized quickly was that in any business, you have to become the proprietor. You have to have a full understanding of what's going on before you can bring somebody else on. Dan, I know you're now working with Mike, so this is a good example, right? It's not something you really could have brought Dan on until you had to understand of like, what am I trying to accomplish? What is the goal? Because otherwise what happens, and I always tell people, this is what happened with the first few people I hired in my first year in business, is if you're asking people, I always use the Viking ship analogy of you're saying stroke, and well, eventually people are going to put down the oars if they keep seeing the same island over and over again because you don't know what direction you're going.
Yeah.
So that's what I realized. So I took 15 months and worked by myself to figure out how am I going to be successful? Like how am I going to build my business? And once I figured out the direction we wanted to go, which was the realtors and the lenders and building those relationships, I was able to bring other people on and show them how we are going to be successful, and we did. That's what we That's how we created a path to success.
Wow.
And I think that's the most important thing. And I mean, really, like you're running your own business, right? That's what a realtor does. A lender 100%. Runs their own business. Like they've got to go get.
Yep.
So if you don't know where you're trying to get to, it's like Yogi Berra says, if you don't know where you're trying to go, you just might not get there. And it's the truth. So
yeah, you could just go around in circles. I actually was reading that in a book today, just basically saying, you can set sail, but why would you ever set sail without knowing which port you're going to go to next? Otherwise, you're just floating around. It's just silly. It's inconceivable.
Pointless.
So that's interesting. So you said you worked by yourself for like the first 15 months, give or take.
I did.
And figured out the direction you wanted to go. And then in hiring that first person or couple people, what advice, obviously, we're going through that right now, and it helps me because he's my brother and he understands where my head is at on a lot of things, and we communicate really well. So I can come to him and say, hey, here's what I want to accomplish. Can you take control of this and make that happen? He's done that with social media and a lot of different things, which has been fantastic. But for people who can't hire their sibling,
sure,
what would you recommend as far as the first person you bring on board? Like what were you looking for when you first were looking for a new hire?
So I think that the most important thing when you're bringing on anybody onto your team is, and I think this is applicable in sports or in business, where you have to be able to know what is your competitive advantage. Like, what is it that we do differently than anybody else? Because if you just bring somebody on and say, hey, join my team, and you don't let them know, like, this is why you should join, this is why we're going to be successful, this is how you are going to be successful, they come on and they don't know what's going on. You think about, I'll use the Saints as a great, like when Sean Payton, when he brings on a brand new draft pick, that comes out of college, I promise you, the first thing he explains to him is like, this is the goal of the Saints. This is, which is obviously the Super Bowl, but he tells it. But you can't just say, oh, we're going to the Super Bowl. You have to have
here's
a plan.
how you fit into that plan that we have.
Exactly right. And I think so that's what I recognize. I had to know what our competitive advantage was, this is a great segue into like the kind of about Brightway. So the reason why I chose Brightway and what I like about Brightway and where I think the value is that, so Brightway is the 5th largest independent insurance agency in the country.
Wow.
So we have 265 offices spread out across 26 states. And the difference between Brightway and other agencies is that the average independent agent will have somewhere between 6 and 8 carriers that they're able to write through. Here in Pace, or Pensacola area, we have 51 carriers that we write through, which...
Holy cow. Let's just pause and appreciate that for a second.
Yeah, literally.
That is crazy.
The difference. And that's our competitive advantage. And that's what I told people on the team. I said, this is why you want to work for me or with me.
Brightway is better.
Correct. That's right. This is what we do. This is the competitive advantage. This is why you're going to be successful, is because we have 6 times as many carriers, so when I'm going to the realtors and lenders and I tell them, just like your response was there, I could say, Mike, I write through 51 carriers, which means I can find the best coverage for your clients at the lowest price. But also, when you bring me that house that has a Rottweiler going down a slide into an unfilled pool, I probably have somebody that'll write that for you.
Well,
and that's a huge ad.
For people who don't understand that, then, because we have a lot of people listening who aren't familiar with the real estate industry, explain that. Explain, what a carrier is, like the process.
You and I had a situation just a few weeks ago. It's a perfect example. You called me and you had a house that was built like in the late 1800s.
It had like fuses, right? Instead of a circuit breaker.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like, well, there's a lot of insurers that don't want to write those things, those type of homes. With having as many carriers as we have, and traditionally, I should say, what will happen with that is a realtor will look at that, and it used to be like the stopping point. The realtor would be like, great, I got a hot buyer, and all of a sudden like, oh,
can't get
polybutylene or fuses. I'm not going to be able to get insurance for this guy. Well, this is terrible. Now I'm going to have to just I'm either going to have to try and flip this person on the other house, which as you know from the real estate, once you get somebody on a house, like you don't want to move them off that house.
No.
It's like it's hard enough to get them to land on something that once they're there and they're like, "Ooh, I love this one, Mike." It's like, great, let's stop right here. I'm gonna plant a flag. Let me get your lender.
That's the hard part is over.
Yeah,
Let's just close the deal now.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like, but that used to be a stopping point. Is that they'd be like, "Oh, it's got fuses. I'm not gonna be able to do it." Again, looking through the realtor and the lender's eyes, that's where we come in, and I want to be that solution provider so that there's no more stopping there. The realtor can literally look and go, "Don't worry about it. My guy Chris at Brightway, he's got people. Let's keep moving forward. Let's get you in this home."
Yeah.
Wow.
I love it.
With 51 carriers, you definitely accomplished that.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
That's crazy. So that's a huge, that's the Brightway thing, like you were talking about.
That's our competitive advantage.
Interesting.
Absolutely.
So how long were you working in NOLA then, or New Orleans? How long were you there before you made your first franchise? And I mean, how did that whole process work out?
Yeah, for sure. So, so after 15 months of working by myself, I brought on the guy who's my longest tenured employee now. He was actually a guy I know. So I play music in New Orleans. Oh, I used to before I had a 4-year-old. But I play.
I saw that on your Facebook.
Yeah, so I used to play music around town, and the guy was a bass player. And bass players are fantastic second people to bring on board because they're just used to like kind of standing in the back and doing what they're used to doing what they're supposed to be doing.
So, a little music anecdote there.
Yeah, exactly.
That's cool.
And he's been fantastic. Like, I mean, he has come on. He's my right-hand man at this point in time. But I think that the most important thing, which is why I think y'all have a real advantage being siblings, is because I think the way to be successful is and I told somebody one time, I think I could write a book about this. Like, when you make that hire and you get that other person on board, you can grow because like, hey, I can leave the shop and everything's not gonna fall apart. Or my customer's gonna call in and I know Dan. Know that Dan is gonna take care of them the same level of service that you would provide.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
And that's when you can grow. Like that's really, as a business, when you can grow, when you've got somebody sitting back at the shop who you're like, I can trust that person. Because I think that's the hardest part for any business is you hire people and they don't work out. They've got all kinds of issues going on. And in the back of your mind, you're like, can I leave? Can I leave and know that like my
and that's the whole purpose to bring somebody else on is so you can leverage. So like you said, these things are being handled. I don't have to be doing this. This is not the highest and best use of my time. I could be doing this over here and bringing in more business, providing for more people, helping more people. And the things that I don't have to be attentive to are still being handled, you know? And that's the thing is if you want a day off, you don't get a day off, you know?
Yeah, that's right.
As a business owner. So it's really, and it helps too for him. I mean, I feel like we say this on just about every podcast, but he's learned so quickly. And I think a lot of that comes down to, us being able to communicate so well. It's been really tough. And maybe that's a question for you, but, training new people and getting them on board with your systems and processes. I mean, was that a bumpy road in the very beginning when you brought your first person on?
When I brought Carl on, he was running a laser tag. He was the manager of a laser tag in New Orleans, but which was good because he had it was so I mean he was running in, it was but he saw that there was no room for growth there, and he recognized like he'd hit a ceiling. He knew there was nowhere to go, so it was a good opportunity for him. But what I constantly do, and I think one of the most important things when you bring people on the team, and my team probably says I do this too much, but I feel like it's important, is I constantly am asking them, do you like the industry? Like, because I don't care how good you are at something, if you don't like the industry, you will start to, your performance will start.
It'll come across
plateau. It will. So I ask them all the time. I mean, literally once a quarter, I say, hey, how are things going? Do you still like it? Because insurance is not for everybody, just like real estate is not for everybody. Lending's not for everybody. There are things that in any job that you start to just dislike, but the people who are successful, they get past those things they dislike. I'm sure you could I'm sure the mountain of paperwork you have to do to close one home is probably awful, but the reward at the end makes it worth it. You're like, hey, I'll keep going. Like, I'll do the paperwork or whatever the challenges, that you have on a day-to-day basis as well. But you have to like the industry. And so that's the main thing I try to make sure is that people coming on board, because insurance is something that it's easy to get into. Because, I mean, you just pass a license, and it's like, hey, I'm licensed. Great, here I go.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean you're going to like it. And if you don't like it, if you don't want and we're very transactional. Like, that's what it is. Somebody calls in, I need a homeowner's policy. I need an auto policy. I need a flood policy. that's what we're doing. But it's very transactional. You know, it's like once that's done, it's like, okay, see you later. I mean, we ask for referrals, stuff like that, but it's not you're not really like a financial advisor in the sense of like, yeah, exactly. That's right. Exactly. So that's what I try to make sure, number one, is that they like the business. Number two, because we are offering financial advice, insurance is a financial product, I make sure like they understand it. Yeah. I think one of the most interesting things that people miss with employees is they don't make sure that the employee really understands what's going on. And the thing is, the employee will not say anything because the employee thinks you're gonna fire them or you're gonna come down on them.
Well, that's I mean, even when I first started, Mark is like technically my boss, but I didn't want to ask questions just because I was scared of looking stupid. Right. You know? I mean, and that's a really good point. Because I think a lot of times they'll just either figure it out or figure out how to limp by on something without having to ask a question and be embarrassed for just that second. But then they have the answer, you know. And I've told him before, like, I wish when I first started, I would have asked a lot of stupid questions when people knew that I was still brand new in the business, because that's the best time to do it. If you're brand new, you can ask questions, you can ask what seem like stupid questions, but once you know the answer, you're good. You can move on. Every once in a while, I'll think of something, I'm like, how do I not know the answer to this? Yeah. And now I don't want to ask the question now, you know, I feel so it's a tough dynamic. But
well, and to piggyback on that, that's one of the things that I talk to my team about all the time is when you're with customers, if you don't know the answer, do not fake it. Like go get the right answer, because nothing will burn a deal faster is that you give a customer the wrong answer and then they go find out you gave them the wrong answer and now you're no longer the subject matter expert. And I don't think that people's expectation is that you know every single thing there is about insurance or real estate.
That's a lot of times you can earn some of that respect by saying, hey, you know what, that's a great question. Let me make sure that I'm giving you the correct answer on that. I mean, you don't know it off the top of your head, but you coming back and giving them the right answer means you are that resource. They can come to you to get the right answer. Maybe it takes you a second, but and people can smell it when you're faking too.
Oh yeah.
I mean, fake it till you make it. I mean, yes, there is a place for that, but not when you're answering questions for clients. You know?
No.
It's really, people can tell when you are just trying to come up with something off the top of your head.
Yeah.
So
and that's what's so weird about that is that that's not customers' expectations, right? Like if you go onto a car lot, right, and you're looking for, let's say you're looking for a blue Mercedes, and you go on there, and it's a massive lot. You recognize the massive lot. So your expectation is not that the first guy you walk up to, hey, do you have the blue 300 series? For him to be like, yes, I do. I know right where it's at. He's
going to go look it up.
Yeah, if he says, let me go check and see. You're not like, oh, you got to go check and see. I'm out of here. Like, nobody does that.
Yeah, that's a good way to
verifying.
Look at it.
Yeah, that's not how customers respond, but people have this expectation like, I better answer now or I'm going to lose this customer. That's not how people respond. They're like, oh, great. Thanks for going and getting the correct answer for me.
That's because having the correct answer is more important than you getting them an immediate answer.
A quick
That's
answer.
right.
Yep, exactly.
Interesting. Okay, so you go to your people, make sure, hey, do you understand the industry? Do you enjoy the industry? And then if they, check off, and I'm sure there's more, but if those two things are set, they're probably going to be a pretty good fit.
Yep. If they like the industry and they understand the industry, and then I think that it's like I think one of the keys and one of the things you read about in business, like if you read different magazines or books that talk about managing people, the biggest thing I think that people miss is constant feedback. Like, and I'm talking about daily. You need to be, if you're not asking your people at the end of the day, how's the day? What you got going on? What can I do to help make your world better? If you're not asking that every single day, you're missing an opportunity. Because your people want to tell you on a regular basis, this is what's going on. They want to be able to feel confident. And the one thing about it is when they vent and they tell you what they're struggling with, that's, you have to be the coach. Like you cannot be, you cannot bring the stick. That's the time to bring the carrot. Because they want, because if you give them the stick, they'll never ask you again. They will walk. They'll be like, dude, I trusted you. You told me to come to you with this, and now you're burning me. Like, I'll never bring another thing to you. So I think you have to give them honest feedback. And I do think that there is the time when somebody, to your point about if they're months down the road and they don't know the answer to something you think they should know, that's when you need to step back and go, hey, let's go have a one-on-one and let's sit down and figure out, why don't you know the answer? That's right. Yeah, because something occurred here where you should absolutely know this answer. And I've had to do that with everybody on my team at points in time where I'm like, and I look at it as like, it's obviously something I did not communicate. I don't blame them. It's frustrating on my end. I'm like, how did I not make sure that you understood this particular piece of the business?
Well, and you can definitely you're a lot more trustworthy when you can look at it that way, step back 100%. And be like, hey, let's work together as a team to make sure that we're
and that's
squared away.
Because you all have the same goals.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, you all want the same things. And that's, I think a lot of times, at least me thinking back to some of my bosses, I'm scared to ask questions or give that honest feedback because I'm scared that I'm not going to like the
response.
Yeah, the response. Mm-hmm. And it's so important, like you said, to be the coach and just be able to have just a designated time where they know they can tell you anything. You know, and obviously it's good to have that discipline. That happened with us recently. There was something that, he let me know that he was doing something, and he sent me a screenshot of his conversation with somebody, and I thought, I've never even told you. It was over a counteroffer, I think. And we were talking about, terms of the deals and things. And I thought, you're giving away way too much information. Yeah. But I had never said, hey, when you're talking with other agents and we're in a multiple offer situation, be careful how much you tell. You know, be careful how much. And it was, and he was profusely apologizing. And I was like, that's not your fault. That's my fault. 100%.
Right.
But if it ever happens again, that's the time for the stick.
Yeah, exactly.
That's right.
No more carrot for you.
That's right. Yeah.
So interesting. Yeah. Okay. So that's kind of your process for bringing new people on your team and for training and things like that. And coming back to, I'm sorry if you already answered this, but when did you do your first franchise? Like how far in were you?
So we started the first franchise in September of 2016. So we started the build out in May, and then we actually opened the doors in September of 2016. The first 4 months, it was interesting. I really had no idea what was going on, and I was just watching my operating account go down. I was like, okay, I need to figure something out here. And that's when that was actually when that 15-month period started. So those first 4 months, I brought people on, and I didn't know what direction we were going. And I think it was because and this actually brings back to kind of coaching the team. This point here is that I don't know what my expectation was, and I tell people this as a joke, because we're right next to a Subway, and so I think that maybe I thought when I opened like a Subway sandwich shop, and I was like, maybe I guess my thought was like, oh, you put a sign up, and people just start walking in. I need insurance, and I quickly realized that that's not how it works at all. And I actually joke with people that the only people that were walking through the door were people who were on their phone, and they thought they were going into Subway. Because they would walk in looking confused, and they'd be like, oh, wait a minute, wrong door.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
So I quickly realized, like, if I don't go out and beat the bushes, like, we're not going to have any customers.
Yeah.
And so and I say that because I think that's one of the things when I look for people to bring onto our team, which we have 6 people that operate in New Orleans. We have 4 that operate here in Pensacola, and then we have 2 in Fort Mill. But one of the things I tell people in the interview process, because I want them to understand, this is a sales job. If you're not competitive and you don't like compensation, like if you're not a compensation driven person, you're not going to, it won't work because we're a high volume shop. We move a lot of policies, but the people who succeed on my team, they're very competitive and they're very compensation driven. And I tell them all the time, like, nothing gives me more pride than signing my name at the bottom of their check. Like I want them to literally I tell them, take as much from me as you possibly can because it's good for everybody.
If they're succeeding, everybody's succeeding.
That's right. Yeah. So, but I tell them, like, if this is not you, and there's some people who they are not competitive or compensation's really not their thing. They're like, oh, I just want to make a good base. Picture. Yeah. And that's it. And I'm like, that's not this job because it's like, you need to be competitive and compensation driven.
That's interesting. Good. Yeah.
I think one of the things I would say about that when you talk about starting the family business, and one of the things I also try to get my team to understand, and I'm just a really big believer in this. It's like, so I try to get my guys to recognize, and I say guys, we actually have females on the team. I'm just using the colloquial guys. But I try to get my guys to feel like they run their own business inside of my business. Like they run their own desk. And I think most of them will tell you that is how I operate.
Yeah.
And I think that's important to give people autonomy. People want to have, in my opinion, I think that the people on my team, they want to know that I'm there to support them and that I've got answers and I can help them be successful
when they need to come to you with questions.
That's right. But they want to be autonomous. Like they want to, because there's no way, there's no one way to sell insurance. There's no one way to sell homes. It's like, so you have to, I think to get them to be successful, you have to let them find their own way of interacting with their clients and support them, because we have people on our team. I mean, there's people on the team who are very much like, where I am like very super, gregarious and chat.
Yeah.
And then I have other people who like they are just subject matter. Yeah, they're subject matter experts, and their clients love the fact that they know the business and they know the industry. And it's like that guy who is the engineer or the architect or whatever, he's not looking for somebody like me who's going to be like, hey.
Yeah.
He's looking for that guy who's like very methodical,
Yes,
very fact-driven. Yeah.
I remember that I interned at Beck Partners, a commercial real estate firm here. And I went to a couple of sales meetings. This was like my third semester of college, so sophomore year. And I was sitting there looking around the table, and you have like the really bubbly ladies who are selling a lot. And then there's, guys who look like, they just look like they got off work at Office Max. They're just sitting there in a polo and, and not speaking up unless they're asked a question. And I thought, man, I feel like in sales, you have to be like outgoing to some degree, which you do.
Yep.
But also those kind of people, there's a place for everybody, as long as, like you said, if you're self-motivated, you don't have to be one stereotypical type of person.
Yeah.
Because there's people who love working with both types of people.
It's really giving them that sense of responsibility and ownership, like you said, that just gives them.
It means they can run the business how they want to.
Exactly. It creates a lot more drive, a lot more tailored capabilities, I guess.
That's right.
What I'm driving at.
Yeah. So my apologies. When I said your first franchise, I was thinking, when did you open up your second office?
So the second one was Pace, and that was in July of last year. I bought it from, there's a gentleman here, Phil Gambrell, who actually owned another insurance agency. He decided to retire.
Okay.
And so he owned that one. He also owned the Brightway. He was looking to just get out of the industry as a whole and go ahead and fish and golf.
Yep.
And so he reached out to me, and I came here, and we became very fast friends, and it was a really good deal for us. And being from Tampa, knowing Florida, it was an opportunity for me to get back into this area. I've always loved Florida. I'll always be a Florida boy. So it was a good opportunity. It was only 3 hours away.
Not a bad deal at all.
No.
Yeah.
So when you opened up a second office, then I'm sure that was another learning curve, balancing between two. You're split now between 3 different offices. And how often are you traveling to your different offices? How involved are you in the daily aspects of each operations?
Yeah, great question. In fact, I was talking to a potential Brightway franchise owner yesterday who's looking to open one in Illinois, and he asked me the exact same question. He said, what was the thing you noticed? And I think the learning curve there was that the expectations, you think like, hey, which our office in New Orleans, so out of 265 offices in Brightway, our office is number 4. Like, we crush it in New Orleans.
Wow.
So, I was thinking like, hey, we built this great process in New Orleans. All I got to do is just replicate it right here in Pensacola, and we'll be good to go. I didn't realize that's not how it works. You actually have to go in, and what I've spent the last 14 months figuring out is getting an understanding of the market. And Pensacola is not New Orleans, not in a bad or a good way. It's a totally different market. It's very you've got a lot more transient population here because of the military base. You've got a lot of people that come in. You've got people who they go away and then they come back to Pensacola. So it seems like a very close knit community, which is different. Like New Orleans, it's very transient, but it's like people who've never really they're just coming and going. You know, so it's different. You've got people who've been there for a long time. But it's just a different type of market. The other thing is Pensacola is about half the size of New Orleans, so the talent pool is different here, and the just the pace of life is different here.
It is.
That's one thing I found is that my guys in New Orleans, they push all the time. Like, they're very aggressive, very competitive, and they here. I have not really found, the talent to want to work. They're like, hey, 5 o'clock, time to go. And that's nothing against them. It's just a different
pace of life.
And they work just as hard as my guys in New Orleans. It's just a different pace of life. They look at it as like, hey, work starts now and then it ends. And now, in fairness, they take their computers home and they do work when needed.
Yeah.
But it is like they're ready to go home. It's just a very different situation than what we have in New Orleans. So that was the learning curve, was you understanding that you cannot just take move it to a brand new location and be like, oh, we'll just move A over here and it'll be exactly the same, because it won't be. And then the other piece is, I'm only one person. I can't be in 2 places at the same time. And so I have to try and find that balance. Actually, one of the things we're doing right now is I'm in the process of building out an org chart for my entire company, because you ever read The E-Myth? You ever read that book?
I've heard of it. Actually, it's on my list of things I want to read, but I have not, no.
Yeah, so it's a fantastic book, and one of the things that the guy who wrote it, the author's name escapes my mind, but he talks about one of the most important things you can do, even if you're a one-person shop, is build out org chart. And even if it's your name that for all the different positions, it's again goes back to knowing where you want to go, right? So right now I'm in the process of trying to figure out where do I want to go? And I'm almost at like that nascent level again where it's like, hey, I got to restart because now I have 3 offices. But if I don't build out an org chart and know like this is where I want these people to go, this is what I'm trying to accomplish. And then I have people like Carl who's been on the team for a while now. It's like he's not going to stay there and be an insurance salesman forever. Like there has to be growth, right? And you got to, but you have to define that. That's right. And you got to define that and say, okay, how do I take somebody who's been successful as an agent and how do I move them upwards so I can bring on other people and they can make those people successful? Because at the end of the day, if I can't pull myself out of the seat, our ceiling's very low.
Yeah, that's true. I agree with that.
Great point.
Interesting. So you can't just uproot it and move it to another place. It's location specific, very much so. That's true in any business.
Yeah.
So then, having said that, I mean, you're only 3 hours away from New Orleans here, and then what brought about the deal in South Carolina? I mean, how did that even come together?
Yeah, so it was a situation where one of my really good friends, he lives in Charlotte. And so about a year ago, he had decided that he was, looking to possibly move in a different direction with his career. So he reached out.
Buy out people who don't want to be in insurance anymore.
Well, it's interesting you said that is the one thing about being in a franchise is that, and I'm sure this is whether you own a McDonald's or you own a Brightway, is that it is a little bit fish in a barrel from the sense of they're bringing people, and not everybody's successful. Like Brightway is a great system, but not everybody's successful. Just like this is one of the hottest real estate markets ever. Not everybody's a great realtor. There's lots of people who they try. They're like, oh, I'm going to go be a realtor. Yeah. And it's one of those things that like really people think like, oh, I just go get my realty license and I start, making money. And it's like, no, that's not how it works at all.
Very difficult. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like, it's the same thing with Bright. I mean, you're opening a brand new business. And I think one of the things I tell people when they call me, because Brightway has me talk to people who are potential franchisees, and I always tell them, I say, the most important thing you can do, because like my agencies are Brightway Insurance, the Schmidt family agency. I'm like, the most important thing you can do on day one, flip those around, because it should be the Schmidt family agency sponsored by Brightway Insurance. And that's the same thing if it's a Chick-fil-A. If it's like Jones Chick-fil-A, you better make it where it's like Jones and Chick-fil-A, sponsored by Chick-fil-A, because the CEO of Chick-fil-A is not coming to help you clean it. It's like it's the same type of thing. It's like a lot of people don't recognize that. And so I know that's a long-winded way, but to your point, so that's what occurs. People get involved and they think like, hey, I want to work for myself, and they don't realize.
I think nice to have all that free time, make your own schedule. Man.
I know that's exactly
not at all what it is.
That's so funny that's what you say, because that's exactly where I was going. It's like people think like, oh, I'll work for myself and I'll have all this free time. It's like, no, you actually will have no free time, because you're dealing with stuff all the time, and the rewards for me. I like the autonomy, but yeah, absolutely. It's
well, and that's the rewards. It's incredibly rewarding for me because number one, I don't have a whole lot else going on in my life. I don't mean to sound pitiful or anything, but I don't have really much other responsibilities. Sure. So I love being busy this often.
Yep.
And the growth of the business is what excites me. Going and doing fishing and golfing doesn't really excite me that much. Now I enjoy going to the beach or, spearfishing or whatever, but those kinds of things, I'm not, at least at this point in my life, I'm not doing this just so I can do that down the road.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
And that's the thing it's rewarding and you have to be in it for that. I think a lot of people get into it because they want to make their own schedule and they want to, be financially free and retire young and all this stuff. And those are fantastic goals, but also it's a long road and you got to be enjoying the process. Like you said, do you enjoy the industry itself?
Yep.
Are you having fun doing this?
Yeah.
Because if you're not going to stick it with it for the long haul.
There was a guy who owned a Brightway in New York, and I remember I was talking to a guy who also owns in Louisiana, and I said, hey, I saw this individual. I said, I saw he posted on Facebook, like he was on his bike at like 11 o'clock this morning riding around, and he posted like, hey, great time or whatever. I'm like,
what are you doing?
I'm like, what are you doing, bro? It's like, it's like a Tuesday. So, I was like, that's kind of great. Done? So, and then 6 months later, he was no longer in business. And it's like, because it was, I think that's how he saw it. And it's like, opening your own business is not, it's not an opportunity to do less work. It's actually, it's a call to do more.
Yep. Exactly. And obviously, like you said, autonomy, I guess that's a good question as well. The more people you bring on board, you're are you more of like a support role now? I mean, obviously I can get a hold of you anytime I have a question, so
Sure.
you're very reachable. How much of that is you supporting your employees, and how much of it is you actually still in production?
Yeah, great question. So I'm trying. That's one of the goals for 2021 is to pull myself completely out of production.
Okay.
I have a really strong team across the board that I can turn that stuff over to them, and really I think that
And they'll
that
handle
is
it really well.
That's
I'm
right,
sure.
exactly. And I think that is the next step in the evolution of a business. Is you've got to, as the owner, trust your people to do it the way you do, like that you've trained them to the point where and you instilled the values that are important to you and the way you want your business to be built, that you can walk away. I mean, right now I'm in Pensacola, but all 6 of those people are in New Orleans, and like I'm not worried at all. Like, and they'll call me throughout the day and say, "Hey, I've got this situation," but like I literally have no concern about how my shop is running there because I know these guys predict. And the good thing about sales, it's a real easy thing. Like I always tell them, that's why the way that our comp structure is set up. I always tell people it's really easy for me to know how you're doing because you're not making any money.
Yep,
like,
that's true.
We are old school. I've got a whiteboard on the back, and like they write their deals down, and it's like it's really. And you have to. And the best part is I put it right by the bathroom. So like every day you walk by, and it's a different color, and it's like if your color's not on there, like you see it every single time you're walking by.
Yeah, well, and that comes back down to how competitive are you? You know,
Right.
some people see that board and be like, "Man, my color's not up there at all. Let's make something happen."
That's right.
And those are the kind of people that do well.
Yep.
So that's really interesting. Okay, well, I feel like we could talk about insurance stuff for forever, and franchising. That's super interesting to me, and the stepping out of the production and things like that, and the hiring process. But I don't want to make it too long. So let's move into, we're saying how you have less time and all this stuff. What do you do for fun? What do you enjoy doing? I mean, I'm sure you spend time with your family.
Yeah.
When you have a couple free hours, are you watching something on Netflix? What are you doing?
Yeah, so I've definitely, I'm a binge watcher as well. So having it
comes out. Here we go.
Yeah. So I'm definitely, I like to. Right now, I'm watching Always Sunny in Philadelphia. Started on the season 1, episode 1. I'm trying to go all the way through them. So I hadn't seen them in a while, but I do that. But really, my daughter, she's 4, and I mean, the time that I have, I was actually telling somebody this the other day. It's interesting that I look at it as, that's what somebody was talking about. Somebody reached out and they're like, "Hey, you want to play golf on Saturday?" And I told him, I was like, I guess this is adulting, because I was like, I really don't. I was like, I don't get to see my daughter. I was like, and my feeling is, so one of the guys that works on my team, he has a daughter that's 14, and he kind of keeps in the back, every time I see him, he's like, "Dude," he's like, "I'm telling you, in 10 years, she's going to want nothing to do with you." He's
in
like,
10 years
he's
is when
like,
you
"You
can
have
play
plenty."
your golf.
That's what he says. He's like, "You have plenty of time to go play all the golf you want." Because we only have one child, and I think that would probably be it. And so he was like, he's like, "You'll have plenty of time." So I really do. I try to, on the weekends, spend my time with her. And then being from Tampa, I do watch the Bucks on Sundays during football season. So.
Okay.
Yeah, but yeah, I mean, that's mainly what I do. It's mainly spend time with the family, and then when I get a free moment at night after she goes down, I'll do a little binge
Watch a show or two.
Yeah,
It's good to unwind.
Yeah.
I'm a little bit. We have gotten on a good schedule, and we're going to the gym in the evenings and stuff like that, because that's the time that works out best for us.
Yep.
But I miss finishing work around 7, 8, 9 o'clock in the evening and watching a movie or something. It's really it's nice. I was just talking with my roommate last night, because we were watching The Last Dance on Netflix. I don't know. Have you?
For sure. The Michael Jordan.
Oh man, it's incredible. Sure. And I'm not huge into basketball at all, but I can appreciate excellence for sure.
Yep.
And it's just, the whole story was so interesting to me. We got 4 episodes in, and now we're on this schedule, and we haven't watched an episode in like 3 weeks. I've hardly watched any TV at all, and I love it. When I look at like an overview of my last month, I'm like, this is awesome. But also, it's like, man. I don't know, haven't done a whole lot.
Yeah.
But what we do is have fun on the weekends. We do stuff on the weekends, like Friday and Saturday. Friday night and Saturday morning is typically what we do, and we take time off and have a good time. So
I thought it's interesting you're talking about The Last Dance, because so how far are you into it?
I think that we had just finished episode 4, I want to say. Episode 3 or episode 4.
What's crazy about that? Have you seen it?
No, I haven't.
I tried to get him into
it with him, yeah.
Dude, I think when I finished it, what I told people was what I thought they did an amazing job of depicting, and I liked how you said, it shows excellence. I think Michael Jordan may have been the most competitive human being in the history of the world.
Yeah.
I mean, his in competitive spirit, like I've never seen anything like it was an obsession. And I think that probably, and I'm not going to psychoanalyze Michael Jordan, but I think that probably psychologists would say like it was an unhealthy obsession with winning. I mean,
but everybody else looks at him as an icon.
Oh yeah,
you know,
for sure.
It's really,
he's still held up.
Yeah, that's something. Actually, Grant Cardone wrote a book called "Be Obsessed or Be Average." I do too. He's got really. I like his books.
Yeah.
But that's one of his books is "Be Obsessed or Be Average," and he talks about you have to be obsessed, and when you're obsessed, people are going to be like, "Whoa, this is a really, you need to slow down, man." But then you look at people who have taken that all the way.
Yep.
People like Tiger Woods or Michael Jordan, people that are like, their whole life is dedicated to one thing and they just do that one thing really well. Well, that's another really good book. I think by Gary Keller, The One Thing. Have you read that?
I haven't.
It's a really good book.
Is it good?
It talks about do one thing and just do it really, really well.
Yeah.
And that's the reason I feel like when I watch The Last Dance, it's kind of, it's not so much entertainment. It's more like, okay, this is a little bit of self-improvement as well, mixing it with TV.
A little educational.
I think you bring up a really good point, though, as you were saying that, and when you were talking about those different things, I think just going back to talking about coaching a team and improving people, I think one of the most important things, and my wife was actually one who told me one day because I was getting frustrated with a situation. It was probably, 2 years ago, and I was just kind of complaining to her about it, and she said, "Chris, you have to remember something right now. No one will ever love this business the way you love it." And she's like, she's like, so you cannot, like, you have to, and I had to pull back. And she was right, because I realized your team, while they may love working for you and they may love doing it, they will never love it the way they will never love it the way that I love it. So I have to look at things through their eyes sometimes and be like, hey, while I can't go light this person up. Like I would, and what's crazy is I would light myself, like if we lose a deal or something, like I would light myself up internally because I'm just this incredibly competitive person.
Yeah.
But I also recognize I can't go light them up about it because it's a coach. I have to look as like, hey, this is a coaching moment. Even no matter how big the deal, no matter how frustrating the loss, it's still, I have to use it as a coaching moment, even though, like, internally, I'm like, how did we lose this?
That is tough. Yeah. I mean, lost deals are one of those things that really, they stick with me.
Yeah.
Only lost 3 or 4, but it's good to be competitive to a certain degree, especially when you're dealing with people like this. We're not in a game where we can, push people around.
Right.
It's really, it's a very collaborative effort.
Yeah.
Every transaction is with sellers and buyers and both realtors on both sides and all the vendors as well. And
the other piece of it, in both of our businesses, you have to remember we're dealing with the most unreliable product in the world. People. So, and it is like, I had to tell myself sometimes at the beginning, I'll never forget when I first, just kind of going back to when I first started, I remember there was a deal that we lost, and in my mind, I thought we lost it because the lender had told this person, go with this other agency. And I remember it consumed me. And I emailed the guy and I was like, hey, whatever, I can't believe you stole this deal, blah, 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 blah. And all of a sudden, and the guy came back. He's like, "Man," he's like, "we're not even closing that loan." The bad part about that guy's never sent me a deal. It was a rookie mistake on my part, and I hope that I'll have the opportunity to correct that down. But I realized I'm dealing with an unreliable product. Sometimes people just decide to go in a different direction. It has nothing to do with you. And I had to sit back and go, "Wait a minute, I did everything right here." For whatever reason, this person, maybe they just liked the tie that guy was wearing that day. I was like, I'm going with you because you like, it could have literally been like, oh, you got an LSU tie on. I like LSU. You like LSU. The last guy didn't have an LSU. So I'm going with you. And it's like, you have to remember, and I tell my team that all the time, they'll get really frustrated when they lose. I'm like, hey, sometimes it just goes away and it had nothing to do with you. Yep. It had literally nothing to do with you.
Like you said, people are unreliable. And it's something that you have to just move on to the next thing. Move on to the next thing and to the next person and realize that you're not going to get every single one. You can try, but it is what it is. So, and I think that's sales. Everybody knows it's a numbers game. And you got to be talking to a lot of people, shaking a lot of hands. And, it's really, I love this, man. This is awesome. I really, I appreciate you. And you're just really, I feel like you get what we're talking about and what we're trying to do. And I really appreciate having this conversation with you.
Yeah, for sure.
Where can people find out more about you? And I know you're on Facebook. You're on Instagram, but not active.
Yeah, I know. So that's one of my goals for 2021. I've recognized that I've got to get some type of marketing person who is going to do that. Brightway does it to a certain degree. But the reality is, like, it's too important. I mean, y'all are talking about the billboards y'all put up, the shirts, the hats, which look awesome. And it's just one of those things. It's one of those things that, like, you've got to always be branding. And I'm not great about it, but you can find. So if you go to brightwayschmidt.com, that'll take you to our webpage, and then
Schmidt is
SCHMIDT.
Perfect.
So and then here in Pensacola, our phone number is 850-289-0500. And you can reach us at that.
Fantastic.
Great.
Yeah.
I love it, man. Well, we'll have to do this again soon, because I feel like there's a
man.
lot of things that we could have talked about that we didn't. So we're talking about, after maybe about 6 months to a year, we want to start having on, some of our favorite people and doing repeat
for sure
stuff.
Follow-up episodes. That's right.
All right. Well, thanks again, Chris. I appreciate you jumping on the podcast.
Thanks, Mike, Dan. Appreciate it.
Yes, sir.